Hello everyone, my name is Legend Ronnie and this game is Rise of Kingdoms. Pairing epic with legendary commanders. What is the strategy behind this? What is the reason behind this? In this video, this is something I'm gonna talk about, and on the same time is gonna be epic pairing with epics as well. So I will try to combine both of them. I have already done a lot of epic with epic pairing videos, and I have talked a lot in many videos, including in the description of this video. So in any description of my videos, if you check, there is quite a lot of useful links and a lot of useful videos which could answer a lot of your questions. But the main importance, and what I'm going to talk about mainly in this video, is going to be about pairing epic with legendary and why I am doing that. Because if you notice, or if you check some of my live streams, if you check some of my war videos and battles, you're noticing that even when I'm rallying, in many situations I'm using epic primary and legendary second, and everyone is wondering and amazed about the results. So let's talk about that. I could start with some of the usual used epics. So I could start, for example, with Peleagius. Now, one of my pairs that I use on the battlefield is Peleagius with double C. So I use Peleagius primary with double C secondary. Now probably you don't have a maxed out double C, but you probably have a 5111 double C. And you're wondering, can you make a utility of that 511 double C? Well, I'm here to answer you that you can, as long as you put an epic primary. Now the reason of using an epic primary, it's probably simple, but I'm gonna explain it. It's because of the skill talent tree. Now if you check the primary skill of an epic, you're noticing the direct damage factor is not as high as a legendary. So for example, this one has 300, and then for another 2 seconds 300 and 300, and it also restores 100 rage after he uses his primary skill. So you have rage restoration and damage, which is very awesome. But you have the skill talent tree and you have a legendary as a second in command, and the reason you put the legendary of a second in command is because of the skill talent tree. Because if you look at the legendary, his primary skill, once you max it out, is 1400 direct damage factor. And if you look at the skill talent tree, you have two important skills, skill talent tree. Which one of them is clarity, which says here, after using an active skill, increase skill damage by 6% for the next 6 seconds. So obviously if the primary commander is an epic, he's going to use his primary skill, then usually after 2 seconds it's going to be the second in command when he's going to use his primary skill. So if you have a legendary which a very powerful nuke, you're definitely going to boost that. So that's 6% over here, and then you have all for one, which after the primary commander uses a skill, active skill damage of the secondary commander is increased by 6%. So that's 12% increased skill damage that you will do to your secondary in command. Now it's the same synergy of using, for example, Herman primary with YSG secondary, because this is people who are asking me, why Herman primary and YSG secondary, why not YSG primary and Herman secondary? It's for the same reason, because YSG primary has a much bigger nuke than Herman does. So you want to boost YSG and have a way bigger nuke. That's the same answer, since I switched to Usher commanders. That's the same answer why I'm pairing Kusonagi with YSG and not YSG with Kusonagi. It's the same answer. I use Kusonagi primary for the same reason, because of the talent tree, because you have clarity and you have all for one, which is going to increase YSG skill damage. On top of that, the reason for using Kusonagi primary is also his other benefits. So you have extra nuke, which is 450 direct damage factor for 2 seconds, which is a total of 900 direct damage factor whenever this one goes in, and it doesn't have an internal cooldown. So you can, if you're lucky, you can get this after 2 seconds again, and probably after 5 seconds again, so it's not dependent by rage. So this can be quite a powerful nuke if you're lucky enough. On top of that is the primary skill from Kusonagi, which has direct damage factor and additional damage factor up to 3 targets. So if people want to swarm your march or they want to swarm your rally, you actually do a little bit of AoE damage. Plus, the most important, removes all negative and control effects from Kusonagi. So any attack reduction, defense reduction, health, damage reduction, slow effects, anything that at that moment is on Kusonagi, he's going to remove them. Who is going to be the second in command that is going to do the next skill? Is going to be YSG, right? So you're going to do a clean, powerful AoE damage with your YSG because of Kusonagi, because Kusonagi will clean all the negative and control effects, and then YSG is just going to pound your enemy. Plus you have permanent stats, attack and defense on your archers, so there's nothing wrong is just having permanent extra stats on your archers. So that's the theory crafting, if you want to call it like that, behind of using epic commanders primary and legendary secondary. It's the same reason, since I was talking about Cavalry commander, it's the same reason of using Peleagius primary and Minamoto secondary. Minamoto is a very powerful nuker, so you want to boost that nuke as much as possible. You want to maximize the output of your epic commanders, or maximize the output of your commanders. And that's also a reason why I'm always so much in favor of the skill talent tree, because it boosts the skill damage from commanders. That's why I'm not in favor of using Belisarius primary. Belisarius primary, he's a great cavalry commander. He's very fast, but that's pretty much about it. He has a powerful debuff, which attack and defense reduction by 30%. That's pretty huge for 2 seconds. That's really huge. But again, not using him primary because he's cavalry, peacekeeping and mobility. So this pretty much says everything, that he is a mobility commander. So if you want to use Belisarius, you best use him as a second in command. Same thing I can say about Baibars. That's the reason why I always put Baibars primary. On the other hand, Baibars, once you obtain his expertise, he has 1000 damage factor. Anything that is 1000 damage factor and above, I consider it a decent nuker. You know, once it's at 1400, 1700, that's a high skill damage dealer or nuker. I like to call them nukers for a reason. But anything that is just above or between 1000 and 1400, they are decent. They are very decent. If you're noticing the commanders that I'm using on the battlefield, they are mainly Sun Tzu, which has 800 plus 200, so it goes close to 1000. Is Baibars. I use Herman every now and then. Osman not so much right now. I use Peleagius, which 300, 300 and 300. It's you know, close to 1000, but the other benefits that you get from Peleagius, the healing and attack and defense to your calves, that's pretty high and very good. Another commanders that I use on the battlefield, it's also Kusonagi, which again, his primary is pretty weak. That's 500, 800, but you have this one as well, which is another 900 whenever it goes off. It tends to go off, to be honest. So that's another reason why I also use Kusonagi. And in a rally, these ticks of damage, they are pretty high, because in a rally you have 1.5 million, 2 million, or probably even more troops. So I was talking about Baibars. So it's the same reason why I'm using Baibars primary and pretty much any commander secondary. Because again, if you go to the talents, you're noticing that I have the skill talent tree same. You need clarity, you need all for one and rejuvenate. You do need this skill. Anything else you want to modify on them, you know, is just it's just additionals if you want to do it like that. So right now this is a tryout of my Cavalry time tree on Baibars. On my Discord it looks a little bit different. It's with mobility from conquering. I have the march speed over here. I'm not sure if I have it saved up. Yeah, this is the one that I have on my Discord, and this is the one that I usually used to. I've done this one for the reason that on the battlefield people have noticed that my Baibars is pretty weak, and that was an actual truth. So I decided to actually make him a little bit stronger. So I've done a talent build with emblazoned shield to last a little bit longer. But I had to give up Moment of Triumph and I had to give up mobility. I haven't tested it so much with this talent build, so I cannot tell you how good actually it is. And then I have this build with Entrenched, which my plan was to use this for hitting cities, or I don't know, something like that. Whenever I plan to hit cities, to actually use this build. Not very hyped about it. What does this one do? Yeah, reduce march speed, increase defense. That's pretty much about it. I could, however, drop, but I'm not so hyped about dropping Feral Nature. Anyway, the point, and going back to what we are talking about, this is the main reason why I use Baibars primary and I use Sun Tzu secondary. Because again, Baibars is the Cavalry commander, he's the Cavalry reader, and then he's gonna boost Sun Tzu primary skill. Sun Tzu, when he's gonna do his skill, he's gonna have the rage restoration, and if as many targets that he hits, he's gonna get additional rage. That means that Baibars is gonna cast again his skill, and so on. So it's a rotation that goes like that. Or I also recommend using Baibars primary with two other commanders, which one of them is Mehmed. So as long as Mehmed is 5/5, this is a very viable combination. You put Baibars primary, you put Mehmed secondary, or another commander that you can use is Ethelflaed with Baibars. For even more reasons. One, Baibars is gonna slow, and Ethelflaed is a free-to-play commander, because you can get her only from the expedition, and at some point you're definitely gonna max her out. And Baibars is gonna slow your enemy, and then with the Warrior Queen you're gonna do 20 extra damage to the enemies who have been slowed. So that brings Ethelflaed being a very powerful commander. Not to mention that you will debuff the target, and you'll debuff the targets, because it hits up to 5 enemies, I do apologize, and reduce their attack, defense and health by 30%. So that's pretty huge. So this is another way you can use Baibars, not necessarily with Sun Tzu. You have various options. You can put Legendary as a second. You can put Double C as a second to Baibars. That's absolutely fine with it. You can put Minamoto. That's again very fine with it. One commander that I personally haven't found much utility using him as primary on the battlefield was Osman the First. Osman the First and Scipio. The reason why is because their specialization is leadership, so they don't have any single type of troops. Any commander that I have been talked about so far, you have noticed that they have a specific specialization. Like this one has Cavalry, this one has Infantry, Archers. Then I talk about Peleagius, he has Cavalry. I talked about Belisarius, they have Cavalry. So this is the commanders I'm always focusing on. that have a specific specialization, either cavalry, archers, or infantry. Any commanders that have leadership, it's very hard to use them or find a very good utility or being very optimal on the battlefield. So that's why Osman the first I always recommending to using as a second. Now the theory crafting behind this is very simple. Now if I go to Baibars, for example, and I pick any of his talents, just one of them, increase attack by 1%, increase health by 3%. So any talent on the cavalry that doesn't give march speed, it gives stats to your cavs, full stats each point. Now if you go to a leadership commander and you check his talents, now each and every single one of them is 0.5. You understand where I'm trying to go? This is exactly what I'm trying to explain. The leadership commander only give you half the stats to your troops, and then you'll have mix of troops group if you want to benefit the most out of this, or if you want to go with armored. If you don't have enough troops and you want to use Osman as primary, you definitely need at least armored to the teeth, so you get an all damage dealt by 3%. And then 1, you're also going to be slow. 2, you're not going to be very optimal on the battlefield with mix of troops. They have proved so many times they are not doing so great on the battlefield. So that's the reason why Osman is, or any leadership commanders, they are not so viable on the battlefield. This is the talent build that I have on Osman right now, and since I have the legendary version of Osman, which is Frederick, because they have pretty much the same thing. They have damage on city, they have nuke, they have increased troops capacity, but again Frederick is the legendary version. They both have leadership, conquering, and skill. I have been trying to play around with talents as much as I can on Frederick and try to find a utility. And every result of using Frederick on the battlefield as a primary commander, they were very bad. So I've tried various of builds. This is the same build that Osman has. I've tried this one as well. For rallies. This is the one I currently use for rallies on Frederick with siege or mix of troops, and that actually works. This is the utility that I actually found on Frederick being very good. I use him with siege and I use YSG as a second, full skill, get entrenched, and I just put a little bit of other troops so I can have a mix of armies, and benefit from armored to get again another 3% all damage. And it's actually very nuking as long as your siege is maxed out. You can pretty much do the same on Osman, but I would not recommend using Osman with siege. Unless you're max technology, then that's totally different. So Osman as a primary commander is pretty much a no-go. One way you can actually use Osman is if your kingdom is new, up to 3-5 months into the kingdom, I believe people are still using a lot of mix of troops, doing a lot of mix of troops build, and at that point I actually think that mix of troops is still worth it. So up to 5 months into the kingdom, mix of troops might still be a thing. So if you actually want to use Osman, you can definitely pair him with Scipio, or you can pair him with any other conquering commanders, and you will create the so-called, which I called it, punching bag. Both commanders have 10% troop capacity, which is this one. I do apologize, is this one, increase maximum troops capacity, which both commanders have 10% troops capacity, and obviously gives you a slightly edge against the specific type of troops, because you do have the troops capacity over them. And if you put Osman primary, you'll have the skill talent tree, and obviously at least Osman will be very hard nuking, and you'll have rage restoration, so Scipio will go and use his primary skill more often to give you a slightly edge protection to your troops, so you'll last longer on the battlefield. But beware of using this, cause 1, you will be slow, 2, you might have more severely wounded that you would wish for. You can definitely use him with legendaries as a second, since Osman has a skill tree with pretty much any legendary you have that has a very powerful nuking skill tree. And one legendary that most players have right now is probably Sunday, which if you manage to max her primary skill, if you follow that path, just maxing out the primary skill before the second, I only care about her being a gatherer, she's another viable option. 1400 direct damage factor. There you go. Very powerful nuker. Osman and Mehmet. Now, if you're free to play and you want to rally cities, I want to give you that as well, since I'm with this pair of commanders right now. It's probably gonna be the best option you have is Baibars primary and Osman secondary. Now, why is these pairs? Why do I mention these pairs? Why would I not say Scipio? Because Scipio has damage reduction. Well, if you want to take down a city, you don't want to take less damage, you don't want to take less death. If you need damage, you need skill damage. That's exactly how you take down your city. That's exactly how I'm taking down any city that I'm rallying. I'm using the most powerful skill damaging commanders that I have in my armies, which is Edward and YSG, to do the highest skill damage possible so I can take down the troops as fast as possible. You don't need Scipio, you don't need Julius Caesar, you don't need Barca that do low skill damage. You need commanders that do powerful skill damage. So from the epics, the two that I would use would be Baibars primary with Osman secondary. From both of them, every single skill, as long as you go with mostly Cavs or preferably only Cavalry army, you will have bonuses against that city. Skills, talents and everything. You'll get a rune, you'll pop a buff, and you're definitely gonna be in a very good shape. First of all, no escape. When attacking cities, normal attack have a 100% chance to decrease garrison attack by 7% and defense by 7%. So you're non-stop decreasing the attack and defense of the garrison. And don't make any mistake that this is stacking, like at some point they have 0 attack and 0 defense. This is just 7% attack and defense. So each turn the defense, or whenever you start attacking, the defense will just have less attack and defense by 7%, and that's it. It doesn't go 14, 21, no. It's just one time for the duration of the battle. You have bonus to your cavalry, you have a powerful nuke, and then you have Osman, which again has a powerful nuke. This one works when Baibars, which is the primary commander, uses his nuke, so that's 1000 plus 400, and then you have 1100 plus 400, so that's a lot of skill damage that he will do. On top of that, after hitting the city for more than 20 seconds, increase troops attack by 15%. So if you have only Cavs, it doesn't matter, it will increase the Cav attack. So there you go, more damage to the city. And then you can make a talent build like I just had one, or I just showed one over here. With the full skill, you get entrenched, because obviously you're attacking garrison and you're attacking cities. You definitely need this one, moment of triumph. The rally is definitely going to be over 90% for a long time, and that's going to be a lot of damage to start with on the city. Now, another question that I get during my live streams is about Sun Tzu and Eulji. Why do I put Sun Tzu primary? Why don't use Eulji primary? Why do I always advise Sun Tzu being primary? So this is one of the questions that I get during my live streams, and the reason behind it is the same on the other commanders. So the reason I put Sun Tzu primary is exactly because of the talent tree. This is the Garrison talent tree. This is a full infantry defense talent tree. Yes, if you do a full infantry defense or mostly infantry defense talent tree, and this one over here is the infantry talent tree that I use on Sun Tzu. It's the same behind this as well. The reason I go with Sun Tzu primary is because of the skill talent tree. Sun Tzu is designed to do a lot of damage. If you check all his skills, increase skill damage bonus, this is damage taken and infantry. Then you have his primary, which does skill damage. Then you have his expertise, which obviously empower his primary. So this is only skill damage. Sun Tzu is focused on doing a lot of skill damage. This is his priority. Then if you check on AOG Mundok does the same. His primary skill, direct damage factor 700. People are saying, yes, but if you use AOG Mundok primary, he's gonna decrease defense of the target by 30% and AOG will nuke harder. It's actually not working like that. As I said, it's at least a 2 seconds difference between the primary and the secondary skill. So by the time Sun Tzu is gonna hit, if you put him a second, this defense decrease is gonna go off. So that's why you need to put Sun Tzu primary. Because if you check AOG's talents, this is the current talents that I use on him. If you check AOG's talents, it says this is the only thing that Sun Tzu will ever benefit. During battle, increase all damage. So obviously that's skill damage as well, for a maximum of 10%. But if you check the skill talent tree, that's a lot more skill damage you can benefit from if you use Sun Tzu primary. So it's not just clarity, it's not just all for one, it's also tactical mastery. So it's a lot more skill damage and rage restoration that you can get from the skill talent tree on top of the attack talent tree. So this is the reason why I usually recommend of using Sun Tzu primary with AOG secondary, or Sun Tzu primary with Alexander secondary, or Sun Tzu primary with any other commander secondary. You can use for your defense in your city. You can use Sun Tzu primary and you can put Minamoto secondary. There's absolutely nothing wrong in doing that build. You can put Sun Tzu primary, you can put Ethelflaed secondary, and you'll just do the infantry and skill talent tree. This is the main reason behind it, is the skill talent tree and boosting the second in command. The reason of using with Ethelflaed would be because you also have infantry. You want to gain a little bit of defense on those infantry, like taking less counterattack damage, which is definitely gonna help, and debuffing your target. So you have double AoE. Sun Tzu does AoE damage, which this fan facing shape area, or whichever hits more target, it's AoE damage. And Sun Tzu has rage restoration as well with his primary skill. So this is the reason why I'm trying to pair these commanders like this. This is why Baibars goes well with Sun Tzu. This is why Sun Tzu goes well with Ethelflaed. And obviously there's various other combinations. This is why people use Sun Tzu with YSG, for example, and infantry. You make use of your infantry, you have double AoE and double increase skill damage. Sun Tzu is a very universal commander, same as YSG, that can actually have room in a lot of pairs. Some people actually go with Sun Tzu primary and they go with Joan of Arc secondary, but that's not something I would recommend. People tend to go for the healing factor. They tend to like the commanders with the healing, which honestly I don't blame them. I don't blame them, because Charles and Richard, they are very, very powerful because of that. They're very defensive, and because of the healing they last very long on the battlefield. But in some situation, in some builds, healing is actually not very, very great. It's not going to give you many benefits. So Sun Tzu and John, even if probably some people had good results, that's because probably nobody targeted you, or nobody got your attention, if you want to put it like that. but it's not something that is very powerful to use on the battlefield. I already talked about epic commander, except one thing. People are asking me why Herman and Kusunoki, and which one primary, and I always say Kusunoki, and they ask me why. Well, for the same reason, like I've talked about the other legendary, or why using primary epic and legendary second. It's the same thing, because of the talent build. Kusunoki has the lowest skill damage, so because of the talents, because of the skill, you want to empower Herman. So if you want to do a epic pairing with these two archer commanders, it always has to be Kusunoki primary. You want to put Herman secondary because he has the powerful nuke, so you want to empower that as much as possible. This is going to give you the slightly edge on the battlefield. This is what, you know, is going to give you that extra damage. And when you're hitting a target with 5 marches, and all 5 they are doing a great job, you'll be surprised how fast a target can go down. Right, again, Scipio, he's a leadership commander. I already talked about Osman, so if I would have to use Scipio on the battlefield, I would actually don't. So at this point in the game, having all epics maxed out and having so many legendaries maxed out, I really don't have a role for Scipio anymore. I really don't use him at pretty much anything. Maybe reinforcing rallies. That's the only thing he's good at, because he has a high troops capacity. Nothing else I can find a very good utility for Scipio. If you're still in the beginning of the kingdom, the best way which people use it for is with Joan of Arc for buffing, or a second in command to Osman, or you can use Scipio as a second in command to Euji, but preferably anywhere you want to use commanders that don't have a specific specialization, they want to be a second in command. Like Scipio, like Joan of Arc, like Boudica, these are all second in command commanders. Now, I already talked about Scipio and I already talked about Euji. Euji, again, I prefer him as a second in command. One rare utility for Euji Mundok would be with Alexander the Great. And for that reason, that's when Euji Mundok can be a primary commander, because Alexander is legendary. It does take a little bit of stars and experience to get him to level 60 and use him as a primary commander, and for that reason, if your Santu is busy with someone else and you cannot do Santu with Alexander, then you can do Euji Mundok primary if you have a level 60 Euji Mundok with Alexander the Great. So this is another pair you can also do. Commanders like Lohar, these are commanders that you should avoid at maximum using on the battlefield. They don't bring anything on the battlefield that is actually helpful for you, will just give you a lot of severely wounded. Same is Boudica. If you want to use Boudica at the beginning of the kingdom, it's okay. She is doing great. She actually does some damage. I have a great history with Boudica and the beginning of the wars in Kingdom 16. But if you want to use Boudica later on, I would suggest that you should use her as second in command and slowly try to replace her with specific specialization commanders as you keep maxing more epics, max skills, more epics. So this is pretty much about this video, guys. This is what I wanted to try to explain. So I probably didn't do as much pairings as I should, but you have to understand the idea and the amount of commanders that are in the game right now. It gives you an almost unlimited possibilities as it is right now, and there's going to be more and more commanders added in the game. But this is the theory about using epics primary and legendary second. For example, you want to make use of your Genghis Khan, but he's not level 60, you don't have the stars, he's, let's say, 5-5. Again, you can use him as a second to any of the Cavalry epic commanders. You have Peleagius, you have Baibars. If your Genghis Khan is, you know, highly leveled up. But I hope you do understand. I hope you guys do enjoy this video. I want to just give you a heads up, and I want to just talk about it because this is a couple of questions that I usually get during my live streams. Players that have watched my wars either in various Lost Kingdoms, Lost Kingdom 1 or Lost Kingdom 2, during rallies and so on. So I hope I pretty much covered everything. If there's any questions, again, you can always ask in the comment section below, and you can always check the description of every recent video where I add a lot of links to a lot of videos, which can also answer you some of the questions that you have. Until next time, this is your boy Geroni signing off. Peace out, yo, and take care.